William Edward Burghardt Du Bois was born on February 23, 1868, in Great Barrington, Massachusetts. The Civil War had just ended, and the Reconstruction period was just beginning. The 14th Amendment that brought national citizenship to former slaves was enacted the same year that Du Bois was born, and the 15th Amendment that allowed African American men to vote was enacted in 1870. Although these changes were being made formally, they weren't being followed by a great amount of the population. Du Bois grew up in a primarily white community. However, he received encouragement from his teachers and peers and did not come to know much about African American culture or racism towards African Americans until later on in life. His mother died when he was just 16 years old, at which point he got a job working at a local mill. He became the first African American to graduate from his high school in 1884 and received a scholarship to Fisk University in Nashville, Tennessee. 3 years later, he moved on to attend Harvard University, where he received his bachelor's degree and his PhD in 1895. Du Bois came to know more about African American culture and the racism towards African Americans when he moved to Nashville. This time in his life gave him his first real exposure to racism towards African Americans and shaped the opinion that he would have on race relations for the rest of his life. This audio clip you are about to hear is a short part of W.E.B. Du Bois' speech entitled "The Negro Problem."
From the point of view of what we usually call the Negro problems. All so-called social problems tend to merge. They all have to do with human actions and are based on human customs and treat the numerous and intricate relations of human beings. Moreover, particular social problems, despite the names they bear, change radically in the course of time. Indeed,
following this part of the clip, Du Bois goes on to discuss how these problems have changed over time. According to Du Bois, the main issue for African Americans from 1863 to 1876 was the right to observe and carry out their own views around politics and political party. This problem morphed into issues of unequal work and educational opportunities. By 1876, the Negro problem shifted to the absence of the previously held right to vote for African Americans and the right to work or be trained to work in all levels of work. The 20th century brought with it a new kind of shift. A shift from believing that power and happiness comes from education to a realization that it comes from economic status. In his book titled The Souls of Black Folk, Du Bois said that, "To be a poor man is hard, but to be a poor race in a land of dollars is the bottom of hardships." Du Bois faced discrimination in different forms and from different people. He received discrimination from white leaders and many white citizens as well. The discrimination was related to politics, education, economics, and more. For example, many white people wanted black education to be focused solely on industrialization, while Du Bois wanted there to be a more balanced approach. Du Bois continued to fight back despite the increasing amount of discrimination and hate he received. During the period after World War I, the NAACP was the most widely known protest platform, and Du Bois was known as its main leader. Later on, he faced discrimination even from other African Americans. This occurred when Du Bois had a major disagreement with another founder of the NAACP, Booker T. Washington. Washington believed that African Americans should be all right with discrimination for the time being and that African Americans would prove their worth through dedication, hard work, and earned wealth. Du Bois strongly disagreed with this and believed that action needed to be taken. For this reason, the African American leaders split into two sides: the conservatives, who supported Washington, and the radicals, who supported Du Bois. Despite continuously having an increasing number of people discriminate against Du Bois, he held his ground and continued to fight for African American rights. In a later piece titled "Of Booker T. Washington and Others," Du Bois reflected on all the many things that Washington had accomplished, as well as the many mistakes that he had made. Du Bois took many actions towards democracy and freedom in the United States. He began his journey into the world of civil rights by publishing a number of different types of pieces related to real-life examinations of the African American community conditions. This gave him the status of being seen as the first intelligent and informed person of Black life in America. He was one of the founding members of the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or the NAACP, that began in 1909. Du Bois also served as the director of research and the editor of the NAACP magazine, The Crisis. As previously mentioned, he also went against his former team member, Booker T. Washington. He stuck with his belief that action needed to be taken in order for change to occur. He fought for his belief that in order for African Americans to develop the ability to maintain leadership roles, that the highest 10% of African Americans needed to be exposed to higher education. He referred to these students as the talented 10th. Du Bois was seen as the voice of the Black community in the eyes of many young African Americans during the start through the close to the middle of the 20th century. In addition to everything previously mentioned, Du Bois was an active supporter of Pan-Africanism, a scholar having written more than a handful of books and other kinds of writing pieces, a sociologist, a historian, and a civil rights activist. After many years of fighting despite discrimination and racism, Du Bois revoked his American citizenship and became a citizen of Ghana in 1963. W.E.B. Du Bois passed away on August 27, 1963. However, he left behind his legacy along with 17 books, 4 journals of which he edited, and his many contributions to the evolution of racial relations.